He's a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee and a 2016 GOP candidate for president. Senator, welcome. Good to have you with us this morning. Good morning to you. So we're going to hear from the president, as we said, in this news conference. And we know Republicans are planning their response. How strong will that be? And do you think that you all would have the votes to override this?
Well, I think the Republican response is going to be very strong. I think the question is whether we can attract enough of our Democratic colleagues to see this deal for what it is, which is we have now made a third-rate autocracy equivalent to a world power, a threshold nuclear power, a country that can now, in about less than 5 years, begin to receive arms imports once again, and one of the leading sponsors of terrorism in the world will now have billions of dollars available to them to use for things like the sponsorship of terrorism. So our hope, and by the way, as we read these documents, there's still not a lot of detail about the inspections. Are inspectors going to be allowed to go in anywhere at any time to look at what Iran is doing? So my hope is that we're going to be able to convince enough of our Democratic colleagues to join us in this effort. Without them, we can't stop it.
Well, the president obviously has a term that is ending. Many of these senators are going to be running for re-election. How powerful an argument is that? Hillary Clinton has already signaled that she's supportive of this deal, and many think that that might indicate that we're going to see everybody else fall in line as well on the Democratic side.
Well, I hope not. This is a major issue of importance. This is not some domestic issue that we can just come back next year and repeal. This is an issue that has long-standing consequences. If Iran becomes a nuclear weapons power, as I anticipate they will over the next 10 years, everyone who supported it or voted for it or allowed it to go forward will have to answer to history for that, including many of my Democratic colleagues and most certainly this president. And so my hope is that we can convince Democrats that they don't want to be a part of something like that, and we can get their votes to stop this.
Yeah. What do you make of the argument that, continuing the sanctions and making them worse? A lot of people believe that was working, the sanctions. And if we ramped them up, it was going to, that China and Russia would never be on board with that plan. So basically, China and Russia backed us into a situation where we couldn't increase sanctions. Do you agree with that?
Well, first of all, I don't agree with that, and second of all, I don't think the foreign policy of the United States should be determined by what Russia and China are willing to do.
Good point.
And so ultimately for us, it's what's in the national security interest of the United States. The Iranians are building long-range missiles, which aren't even touched in this agreement. Why do you build intercontinental ballistic missiles? There's only one reason you build them, and that's to put a nuclear warhead. And you know where they're going to be aimed? They're going to be aimed at the United States, because they know that if they can create that capacity, we can't do anything to them, because they now have a nuclear deterrent on us. And so that's what we should have been worried about, not whether the Chinese or the Russians wanted to act as a responsible country.
Well, the president doesn't seem worried about Iran's future behavior, and he talked about the fact that his critics say that the hundreds of millions of dollars that's now released for Iran to use of their free will, if some of it goes towards terrorism, then everybody's going to have to get together and just deal with that. Here's what he said to Tom Freeman in an interview yesterday. Watch this.
That is a possibility, and we are going to have to systematically guard against that and work with our allies, the Gulf countries, Israel, to stop the work that they are doing outside of the nuclear program.
Is that a good plan?
No, it isn't a good plan. First of all, the Israelis and the Gulf countries are not very happy with this deal precisely for this reason. It's not just the terrorism, by the way, but they don't want to live in with a nuclear Iran in the Middle East either. But here's the broader point that this president fails to make, and I think we need to understand. For him, this whole deal, you know what it is? It is an exhibit in his presidential library. That's what he wants to be able to do, is say, this is what I achieved, peace in our time, this big deal with Iran. Look at the press coverage of this issue. Some of it's been glowing as some sort of historic deal. It's ridiculous. A third-rate autocracy has now been given equality with a world power, the United States of America. They are now a nuclear threshold country on a deal signed with the United States and other global powers. That's why they're cheering in the streets in Tehran. That's why they're celebrating. You don't see any celebrations in America. You don't see any celebrations in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, because they know this is a one-sided deal.
Senator Marco Rubio, thank you very much. Good to see you as always, sir.
Thank you.